Yeah, definitely. Hey, so let's just start off by, you sharing a little bit of your story. And, you've got an amazing story. Obviously, want to jump into the fact that you're on Titan Games. I want to know what The Rock is like, just like everybody else you've talked to about the Titan
Yeah.
Games. And then I also want to hear a lot about the fact, your CrossFit background, being a level 2 trainer. And I've done CrossFit. I'd love to ask you a few questions about that. And then we'll get into some of the kind of Christian wellness and health stuff, but just like start off about how you got into CrossFit, what's your story as it relates to that, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I guess I got into CrossFit after college. So I grew up playing sports. I was a water athlete. So I swam and then I played water polo pretty competitively. So I played water polo at San Jose State, and then it kind of just seemed like the natural next step to kind of hop into something else competitive. So I found a CrossFit gym in the San Jose area, and then I sort of just jumped in all the way. So I learned, and then I took a little hiatus, and then I came back, and then it was like what I devoted my life to, was being in the gym, competing, and then helping other people meet their fitness goals as well. So that's sort of how I started. I did have an athletic background, so it wasn't like that was my first experience, but it definitely was my first experience with competitive fitness on land. So I was always in the water competing. So that was cool.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about that, right? Because it was water polo, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell a little bit about that. So I'm a land athlete. Okay. I don't know. I don't know. There's a tremendous difference. And so like I'm curious to
Totally.
know. I do know that lots of like people jump into CrossFit that almost have no athletic background. So being a
Totally.
former athlete and getting involved, I mean, the transition must have been a lot easier than I'd say for like a normal person you train.
Totally. So I know a lot of people who are super nervous to join a CrossFit gym, or they're just nervous about fitness or competition in general. I didn't necessarily have that. I mean, of course, you're nervous joining a gym or, being in a new environment. But for the most part, pushing my body and competing, that wasn't foreign to me at all. So
Yeah.
that was definitely an easier transition. But I was really accustomed to working out in the water. And so working out on land, I mean, we were in the weight room, and we did some stuff in there. So I had a good strength and conditioning
Yeah.
base. But I definitely had never competed in it. So I think that made it more fun for me. You probably know, when you devote yourself to one sport for so long, it's like actually pretty refreshing to be able to learn something new and then obviously push all of your boundaries to see how far you can go.
Yeah. And did you do much strength training doing water polo? Did you do a lot of Olympic work or anything like that?
So we were in the weight room a lot, but we did mostly like power lifts. So we deadlifted and we squatted, but we didn't do much Olympic lifting. It wasn't until my senior year that we changed strength and conditioning coaches, and then I learned how to do that stuff. So I learned how to clean and I learned how to snatch. And so it was still relatively new to me. I mean, once I graduated, I had been taught how to do it, but it wasn't something that I had perfected. So it was definitely CrossFit
Yeah.
that kind of got me there. Yes, I had a base. Yes, I knew my way around weights and I knew my way around the gym, and I had a good solid base of movement, but it really wasn't until I got into the CrossFit world that I started doing Olympic lifts and the more bigger skill gymnastics things as well.
Yeah. And I imagine, obviously getting up on the rings and doing, those hand walks, things like that.
Yeah.
You're obviously not
Yeah.
familiar with in the water for unless you're
S-
Jesus, I guess, you might be able to do
So
that. But
different. Yeah.
yeah, tremendously different. So I'm curious to know though, but now you're a
Mhm.
coach, you jump into a CrossFit gym,
Yes.
you must have liked it enough to decide I'm going to become a trainer, but I'm also going to, become a level 2 trainer. How did that happen?
Yeah, totally. Well, it kind of happened. It was a little roundabout situation. So I've always coached, but I never coached anything other than water sports. So I coached water polo at the high school level, and then I coached kids, and I loved it, boys, girls, all of it. And I enjoyed it a ton. And then it wasn't until I was pregnant with my daughter that my mentor at the time was like, have you ever considered coaching adults? And I was like, yeah, I've totally considered it, but don't really know like what that looks like for me. And she was like, well, it looks like this. And we just started to set up an internship. And then from there, I was like, well, I was incredibly pregnant, and got all of my shadowing hours out of the way and just absolutely adored it. So it really was something I didn't question from that point on. I knew that that's what I wanted to do at some capacity. And I knew that I wanted to be good at it and I wanted to get better at it continuously. So that's sort of how I pushed to I got my level 1 with CrossFit and I loved it. And then got my level 2 just because level 1 sort of teaches you the movements of CrossFit and your level 2 teaches you how to coach it. And so I really wanted to up my game in that regard for my level 2, and it was awesome. It was a great certification, and I really liked it. So the gym I'm at now holds me to a really high standard, which is the best ever. So my boss there is continually educating me and investing in me, and it's been really rad.
So what gym are you at now?
I'm at
I'm
at a gym. So I live in SoCal, which is like the Santa Cruz area. And I coach at Coast Range CrossFit in Gilroy. So Wes Pyatt is my boss. He owns our gym.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So got to know, I mean, I've got this, so I got exposed to CrossFit in 2010.
Yeah.
I was still in the NFL and I was looking for a trainer that could kind of give me I had a lot of back injuries. I had 2 back surgeries in my career. So I was looking for something a little more unorthodox, something that was, that would kind of strengthen the core and do some different things besides kind of the typical strength and conditioning. And I found a gym, CrossFit Bellevue, out in Seattle, and I was out there playing for the Seahawks. And the trainer was a former Navy SEAL, which, if I'm looking for a trainer,
that's awesome.
As an NFL player, I'm looking for a guy that's like, could kill me. You know what I mean? I'm looking for a guy that's got some expertise. And so I found a guy that's like, yeah, this man could kill me in 8 different ways. So I feel like he can train me. And I got exposed to it. And the first thing he did was he put me on, the gymnastics rings. He put me on the rings and the pirouette bar. And I was like, well, hold on a second. I thought we were going to do some we're going to tread water for 7 hours and cool Navy SEAL stuff.
Yeah.
You've got me on these rings. But I really, I discovered how that strength in that core and being pound for pound strong as a 245 pound-ish athlete, I realized I didn't have that sort of core strength. So can you speak to that a little bit? And what CrossFit really does for you in so many other ways besides making you look swole?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that so CrossFit is unique in that it marries a bunch of different avenues of fitness together. And I think that's what initially drew me to it, was that it's not just this, it's this and this and this and this and this. And it combines all of these different avenues of endurance and strength and gymnastics and body weight and powerlifting and Olympic lifting and all of these things. It kind of marries them together. And I think CrossFit does a very good job at pulling all of those things together in order to create a well-rounded athlete. So for instance, I'm a water athlete and I've always been great. I have a great endurance base, right? I can tread water for hours. I can play games. I was a swimmer, so I've got that base. But what I didn't really realize was that I needed to be stronger. I needed to lift more weights and all those things. And so I think that's what CrossFit sort of exposes, is that if you want to be a good athlete, which is, I want to be a good athlete, is you've got to marry all of these different things together. And I think that that's what people are sort of drawn to with CrossFit too, is if you come to the gym, you're not just doing this one thing, you're doing all of these different things, and you're going to realize that you're not good at everything. And that's sort of probably what you come to, is you're this big power athlete, and then you're realizing, oh shoot, there's all these other aspects of fitness that I'm missing out on, or that I've been missing out on for such a long time because I've done this one thing. And so I think that that's sort of what CrossFit does. And if you don't have a base in the small things, or you haven't worked yourself up to those big things, that's when injuries start to happen. So any good CrossFit gym or any thought out programmer or, any gym that's invested in seeing people's progress isn't going to throw you to the wolves and just like expect you to throw barbells over your head or lift your 1 rep maxes all the time. They're going to start to ease you into the process so that you can build something like that core strength to get you to a place where you are throwing barbells over your head, or, you are back squatting more than you ever have before. So I think the marriage between all of these different avenues of fitness, it really does produce results, and it gets your body in places that you've probably never been before. It's not like NFL players are hanging from rings or, using different gymnastics movements. And so once you kind of and I don't know about you, but I watch little tiny gymnasts do some of the most incredible things, and you just watch like their core strength and you're like, what? So I wish I was a gymnast at this point.
Oh, I bet. Well, man. I mean, the gymnast, when you think about pound for pound athletes, you've got to put some of the gymnasts in that category. Because I wouldn't
Oh
put
my
an NFL player in
gosh.
the category of pound for pound athlete. I would look at maybe fighters, and gymnasts are kind of the two that come to mind. But
Totally.
there's plenty of others. But yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to know, like, someone's coming to a gym for the first time. No idea what the heck they're doing. They've worked out a couple times and they're looking for a good trainer. You mentioned no good trainer is going to just throw you under a barbell and have you start cleaning. They usually start with like a broomstick or a PVC pipe or something. What's a few things someone should look for? Hey, I'm new to a gym. I want to work out. I know I should be healthy. I know God wants me to be healthy. What should they look for in a CrossFit gym?
Yeah. So, obviously I'm biased. Obviously I think CrossFit is the way. And I've seen a lot of success with it, but honestly, one of the biggest successes that I see, or one of the things that keeps people in a CrossFit gym, is the community aspect, right? Like, you can come in and you can talk to me about fitness. I can explain to you why everything we do is going to work. But it is the people next to you. It's the shared suffering that really produces the results, right? Like, when I've got someone texting me at 5:30 in the morning because they know I'm supposed to be at the 6 a.m. class, like, that's probably what's going to yield the results. And so, I just love when people come into CrossFit gyms, maybe not during COVID-19 because things are a little bit weird right now. But I love when people just walk into our gym, because then they've got the opportunity to see, like, oh, this is what it's like. These people are working out next to each other. Like, if I'm working out next to you, I'm probably going to push harder than if I were working out by myself. That's true for most people, not everybody, but so it's kind of, it's a lot tied into the community aspect as well. So if you walk into a gym and you can feel that people like each other and they want to be around each other, then you've probably found a good place. So that's one of the first things that I tell to look for is, are people talking? Like, do they get along? Do the coaches know their names? Like, are those things that you're experiencing when you walk in the door? Did more than one person say hello to you? And that's sort of going to be a good test too, to like, oh, these people care. They've been invested in, and so they want people to feel comfortable when they walk into the gym. So that's something I tell people to look out for a lot. Yeah. And then the other thing is, you want to make sure that someone's teaching you how to do all of these movements. CrossFit is we do a ton of big movements. And if someone isn't breaking it down for you with a progression that you can remember, teaching you all of the things that it should look like, and then telling you what it shouldn't look like, that's going to ensure success. So if you're walking into a gym and they allow you to just be thrown into a class, they might not have necessarily thought that through. So if you go to a gym where they have an onboarding process where they're going to teach you all of the foundational movements that you're going to be seeing in classes, you'll probably be set up for success. So making sure that they do have an onboarding process to kind of get you there. Those are the big ones. Yeah, I like when people feel confident once they learn the big movements. You feel better about pushing yourself during the class. So,
totally.
Yeah.
Well, going back to the communal aspect of a CrossFit gym. I mean, there's not a CrossFit gym I've ever been to, and I've lived in Salt Lake City, I've lived in Seattle, and I've lived out here in the Bay Area. I just lived all over the place, going to different CrossFit gyms. There's not
Yeah,
almost not a single one I've been to where there's not a tremendous communal aspect to it, where the coaches are
totally.
and the people love to be in the gym,
Mm-hmm.
and you can kind of build that
Totally.
community. And I mean, thinking about this for a second, like from like a let's call like a faith perspective, the
Mm-hmm.
church is really supposed to exemplify that, the community of God, and you have
Yeah.
this the camaraderie around being a body of believers. And really, it feels like on some ways, a CrossFit community has done this at a higher clip in some cases
Mm,
than even a church. So I think
mm.
the church probably has a lot to learn from how CrossFit does this.
Yeah, it's actually really funny that you say that because I have gotten into conversation with pastors about this exact topic. Like, I have had a pastor look at me and say, "You guys have it figured out. How do you do that?" And so I've had like a lot of time to think about that and to reflect on that because I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool that people that we have created a really cohesive and accepting group of people, and I think that that's what it comes down to a lot of the time as well. Is it's a very open and accepting place that allows you to come into their circle, even if you're not where they are. And I think we see that we miss that a lot in the church, and people feel like they need to be a certain way to come to church. And I think that CrossFit gyms are like, we want you any way that you are because we know how we can get you healthy and we can get you better. And that's what the church should be saying, like we know the way to life. Like we have the answer. I don't care who you are, where you are, what color your skin is, what you've done, what kind of clothes you're wearing, come in. And I've totally, I love that. Like I love that community is such a big part of CrossFit. And probably it's half the reason why I'm so invested in coaching is because I want to be a safe place for people to come. I don't want them to feel like they have to be a certain way to be in the gym. Like I want them to be seen and known and have the best hour of their day inside of the gym. So yeah.
That's a good word. And I feel like it'd be helpful if a lot of people in ministry got to hear this conversation, because
Mm,
there's to a large degree and a tremendous amount of receptivity to CrossFit and what its message is and its mission.
totally.
And you have elite athletes in CrossFit like
Mm,
yourself, coaches like yourself working out, and you see brand new people, maybe just fresh out of their ramp up and learning how to, in a barbell, and they're partnering together on a lift or something like that. And you're getting
heck
to
yeah.
see them working out together and cheering one another on. And in my experiences, hanging out with people after class, everyone knows it. Like the best thing about it is like, I'm last, on this rod, and everyone is around
Yeah.
me yelling for me. And I think that, it's funny because I do meet a lot of people, especially in the Bay Area, that have never played competitive sports in a team
Mm,
atmosphere, but they love
mm,
CrossFit. And I
totally.
like to say, hey, that's why competitive sports is so fun, is because
Yes.
it has that environment around it. I mean, did you experience that in
Totally.
water polo?
Yeah, totally. The team aspect is like where I thrive. I'm also like extreme extrovert, and I'm way more likely to push to higher and deeper and faster limits if I'm working for a team. So I've always been a team athlete. Even in CrossFit, I do team competition. I have competed individually, and it's cool, and I like it, and I can push myself really, really far. But if I know that I'm pushing for a brother or a sister on the floor, I'm gonna push harder. Like I just am, because it's for you and it's not for me. And I think that, yeah, it totally has gotten me there, and not even just with my team, like my physical 4-person team. It's gotten me there with my classes or with people that I'm coaching or cheering on. Like I feel invested in everybody's workout in a day, and I feel like giving them the tools and the motivation to push themselves is going to get them somewhere. Yeah, it's not going to be the CrossFit Games. It's not going to win the game, but it's going to get them one step closer to health and fitness and being the best version of themselves that they can be for their families and for the people that they're serving. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, I want to, what you just said about becoming the best version of yourself, I want to get to that. But I want to really, I got to talk about the Titan Games. And
yeah.
I got to see clips of it. I got to watch an episode of it. It's just so awesome.
Yeah.
Hearing your story throughout was so cool. So just tell us how you got to even get on the show in the first place, because I'm looking to sign up. But I got to get
totally
in better shape, of course. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, yeah, to a certain extent. So Titan Games it's funny because I felt like it was, and as I've been thinking about and reflecting on the show, it definitely feels like a big stage. Like it felt like a really big stage in the moment and then now. And I've arguably been on a lot of big stages. I'm not saying I'm the best athlete in the world, but I've been under the lights per se, like I've had a lot of eyes on me and I love it. Like it's so fun. But as I thought about like the Titan Games, I was like, wow, this is almost bigger. Like, and it's funny because it's not something I ever trained for. So people are always like, did you have your sights set on the Titan Games? I'm like, no, I had my sights set on the CrossFit Games, I wanted to go to the CrossFit Games and that's what I was pushing for with my team. And so it started by us watching the show last season. We were just watching it because I knew there were a couple CrossFitters on the show that I really dug and I thought they were pretty cool. So we watched, and then midway through, I want to say it was like our first episode of watching it, my father-in-law opened the application and decided that he wanted me to be on the show. So awesome. Yeah, I didn't necessarily think about it at that point. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I want to be on the show. He would just randomly throw questions to me, like, hey, what was your earliest childhood memory? Or it wasn't that, but something like that. And I would answer. And then I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, he's filling out an application. So he sent the application, and I mean, super long story short, I got a call and they asked me if series of questions and wanted to kind of move further down the line. And it was just a series of question and answer and interview and, all that stuff. And had a couple video interviews and all of that. And then next thing I know, made it. So it was really cool. It was really cool. And it was really fun. I would say the process ramping up to it was a little bit stressful, right? Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden you become invested in this athletic event that you never even have trained a day in your life for. So I'd never been more grateful to be a CrossFitter at that point, because I was like, oh shoot, yeah, I can do anything because I CrossFit, I can walk on my hands upstairs, I never would have been able to do that. So I felt decently prepared to do that, which was really cool.
So the process, getting the call and all of that, does The Rock come to your door with a check, or how does it work? What happened?
I know that everybody always wants to know that.
And I got to know about the combine too. So maybe just start with the first part and then.
Yeah. So, no, I think that on the first season, Dwayne Johnson did call a couple of people, and that was really cool, but that didn't happen this season. I just got a call from casting and the producers that I had gotten pretty close to through the process, but I got a call from them and went from there. So the first step, like you said, was the combine, and the combine is they pick a certain amount of people and then there's cuts from there. So the combine is a time that what I gather is they're watching you athletically, right? They're watching how you move. They're making sure that you can do these things. And then they're also interacting with you on how you speak in front of people, how you tell your story and all that stuff. So it was just a time we got to do things like a 40-yard dash, which I had never run a 40-yard dash in my life. So I got to run a real 40. We got to max deadlift, and we got to do like some obstacle courses, stuff like that. And they filmed it. And then from there it was, you hope that you make it. So
with the
yeah.
combine, how much of like the selection process is truly athletic? Because I know that there's a producer, and they've got to have
Yeah,
story. I mean, I'm just curious. Is there it's a pretty good mix,
totally.
but athletically, is that like a huge portion of it?
Who knows? Really? Like, I honestly couldn't tell you 100%.
Yeah.
The few things is it's TV. Like, I always had to keep that into perspective. Like, it is television. There is a lot of money going into this. So, you know, anything could happen at that point. And you could be really bad on the couple of the athletic events, and you could probably still make the show. So it's hard to tell. I think they want to make sure that you are capable. Like, you know, if you get on the show and you can't do the obstacles they're asking you to do, like, that would kind of stink for them. So I think that they definitely did take it into consideration. Also, looking at the people that they picked on the show, they were a fit group of humans. So
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, if you think about it like that, it's kind of like, yeah, it had to have played into it. But I don't know that they like went down the list and they were like, oh yeah, top 30 made it on the show. Like, I think they just wanted to make sure that everything sort of jived, that you had a story to tell. You could tell it eloquently, and that they were getting all walks of life. So I don't know if you've watched the show or been like up to date on the show, but it is a very diverse and amazing group of people. So I think that some of the athletic nature definitely was taken into consideration for sure. But there was also a level of, we are an inclusive, diverse show that is going to highlight a bunch of different kinds of people. So they also took that into consideration as well.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, obviously, like we're talking, NBC, and they've
Yeah,
got to get
totally.
viewers and ratings. But they, at the same
Yes,
time, they go and they select some of elite top athletes to compete in
totally.
this. And it's like one of the women was a firefighter, which
Mm-hmm.
that's awesome, right? Like there's just the cool
Yes,
yourself. You get like a level 2 CrossFit trainers, like high level people.
totally.
But some of the events just kind of seemed, I mean, they looked like some of them were quite honestly incredibly difficult, and others seemed a little gimmicky. So I'm just curious, like some of them are hilarious. They looked like a little bit like a spoof show or something. So I'm
Right.
curious, like, was any of your events like particularly difficult, like that you like really enjoyed to do?
So people always ask, like, was it was it hard? Was it,
Mhm.
I mean, no, not in the grand scheme of life, like, and
Yeah.
in some of the competitions that I've been in, like, I've walked away from a competition and felt like I could sleep for a week, like,
Yeah.
it was absolutely nothing like that for me. But if I had made it a little bit further on the show and, like, got to compete on Mount Olympus multiple times,
Right.
I might have felt a little bit of that that same push that I felt in competition before. But for the most part, the two events that I did were, I mean, they were pretty chill. Like, they weren't insane. They weren't crazy. I didn't like rip my hands or break my back or anything like that. It definitely wasn't like that. The things that you do take into consideration with television is there's no way that you can make it. You can't regulate everything, if that makes sense. Like, CrossFit, you've got a standard to hit. If you're not below parallel, it doesn't count. Everything is the
Right.
same for every person. The weights are the
Exactly.
same, all that stuff. And there's not a lot of room for error, right? Like,
Mhm.
everybody has the same barbell, everybody has the same weight plates, and that's just sort of how it is. Whereas some of these events are kind of like, they could malfunction, or something could go wrong, or your size could matter,
Yeah.
and all of those things. So once you kind of like
Mhm.
step back and take a look at the situation, it's kind of like, oh right, like, this isn't true competition. This is, did everything work really well for me in the moment that I needed it to work?
Totally.
And that's not to say that those athletes aren't incredible, because there are
Yeah.
big name athletes on that show who are absolute studs. But it
Yeah.
was good for me to realize, oh, like, this isn't like a normal competition. You know, we didn't seed it the same way. There wasn't like a tournament to get to that. It was sort of the luck of the draw. You know, you got paired up with whoever they wanted you to be paired up with, versus like, you know, doing a little bit of a tournament style to get your rankings and then to compete against the people that you should be competing against. So it definitely was set up in a way that it was really fun to watch. And I had a really good time watching it. I will say that much. But I don't know if that answered your question.
I mean,
totally.
My heart was beating. I mean, especially like on the, you know, on Mount Olympus when that looks genuinely intense. So like it looked like a giant adult Chuck E. Cheese like playground set, you know, but it looked genuinely difficult.
Hard. Yeah, totally.
It looked tough. But so I got to ask you about the 250-pound like slabs of rock you're kicking over. Like, were those I mean, how difficult was that event? I mean, I know it's like you probably never even got to practice. I guess I don't really know. What was that like?
Totally. So the events are it's funny. At the combine, they had something set up similar. It was a ring, and you had to hold on to the ring, and you had to try to swing, like get momentum, swing, and kick up onto a wall as high as you could. And we were all like, what the heck is this? Like, good thing I CrossFit and swing on rings occasionally, because I would not know how to do this if it weren't for that. And so we did that. And it was funny because at the combine, they were like, don't worry, this has nothing to do with the show. We're not even scoring you on this. We just want to see how you look while you do it. And we were like, okay, I mean, whatever, less pressure, it's fine. And then we get there and I'm doing like the same thing. And I was like, oh, okay. So apparently it did matter. So
that's hilarious.
That was, no one got to practice the events before we did them, but we did get to try that one before. And I think it was just the nature of, they wanted to make sure we felt comfortable doing it before we did it, because we weren't harnessed in. So we didn't, like some of the other events you'll see when they're up really high, they've got harnesses around their body and they're clipped in. We weren't clipped. If we let go of the ring, we would have hit the mats underneath. So I think they wanted to just make sure we felt okay doing it. So we actually got to test it out in advance. And at first I was like, okay, like I'm probably not going to be that good at this. But then we did the test run and I was like, okay, this is sick. And I'm excited. Like it felt fun, like more fun than the combine. And I was kind of like, oh, 250 pounds, like that's going to be fine. I'm excited about this. It's going to be a really cool race. And then watching the girl I went against practice, I was like, she's good at it too. So this is going to be awesome, you know? Because you don't ever want to compete against somebody who isn't necessarily going to be as good or good at something. You want to compete against someone who's good at it. So we got to the event and I was pretty excited, but I will say that there's a lot of buildup to these things. Like, you know, you're held in a certain place, then you're interviewed, you've got makeup on, they want to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you. And then once they finally let you out on the floor, you're out on the floor for a while and you're just sort of like standing around and they're filming and they're talking to the crowd. And so it's definitely not set up in a way that is ideal, but you kind of just have to roll with it at that point, because it is what it is. And I tried to soak up the experience as much as I could. But when we got onto the event and it started and I kicked the first one off, I was like, let's go. Like, this is going to be sick. It didn't feel that heavy. I was like, yes, like this isn't that bad. And I was stoked. And then I got to the second one and I was like, what the heck? It's not moving. So when I watched or after we got done, I was telling my husband, I was like, I must not have kicked that hard. Like I must have just like really kicked the first one really hard and I didn't give the next ones my best effort. And he goes, no, it looked the same every time you kicked it. And I was like, oh, shoot. Wow. So I waited to watch it when it came out. And I was like, oh, man, there definitely is a right way to kick it.
Like a strategy.
And I think and not that you would know that during it. Like, there's no way Kelly, the girl I was going against, was like, if I just kick it in this one spot, it's gonna fall off. And it didn't happen like that. But there definitely is, if you kick it in a certain way, it's gonna catch and it's not gonna come off as easily. So I think
So it's like, it's kind of like hanging on like a
yeah.
rail, and it's like if you kick it, I
Mhm.
don't know if it's low enough or high enough, it kind of just jabs and slides right off.
Totally. And if you
Yeah.
kick it in a wonky way, it catches itself.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, now looking back on it, you're like, oh, okay, well, I should have just kicked it there and it would have fallen off.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, like 250 pounds, it wasn't that aggressive. It wasn't that heavy. I mean, you watched Kelly just like whammy him off. So
Yeah.
I think it just, if it clicked, it clicked. And it was cool. It was fun. I enjoyed that event. Like, I enjoyed swinging around, feeling like a kid. Like, it was fun.
Yeah, it looks like a absolute blast to be on that show. And I mean, I don't know how much you
Yeah.
got to like interact with The Rock at all. I mean, or Dwayne Johnson, but
Mm.
I mean, he seems as cool. I mean, I have to ask. I know that everyone is going to ask you what The Rock is like when you're on a show with The Rock, and you
Totally.
probably got to interact with him a little bit. So, is he eating cheat meals and stuff? Like, does he seem like the same guy on
Yeah.
as he looks on TV?
I was really impressed. You always are skeptical, because
Yeah,
some of these people are just so big name, and
of course.
I feel like I've been in some crappy situations where I've interacted with someone that I really enjoyed or really looked up to, and they
Wow.
weren't that kind, and so I was kind of like, oh shoot, like I really hope this isn't like that. But we actually got to meet him before the show, like before we competed. He surprised my little sister and me and my mom in the arena. So they like tricked us and they took us in the arena. And they just told me that I was going to be showing my sister and my daughter where we were going to be competing. So they were kind of like, yeah, just walk in and show them what's up. And, the arena's yours. Just kind of like
Yeah.
hang out there and check it out. And I was like, okay, this seems weird. Like, cool. Like, that's awesome. I would love to do that. But like, this is a little strange. And then I don't even know why I didn't even think. Like, I had no idea that they would even consider doing that. And then all of a sudden, I look over and The Rock's walking into the room. And I'm like,
Oh,
instant tears. Was not like, they were looking for a surprise and they got a surprise, because I did not, that didn't even come into my realm of possibility. I wasn't like, oh, I wonder if The Rock's gonna show up. Like, it was nothing like
yeah.
that. So it was really cool. And I got to spend a little bit of time with him in that scenario. I mean, it wasn't like a day or anything, but he walked around the arena with us
Mhm.
and talked with my little sister and me and my mom and my daughter a little bit. And I was really impressed with him. He has kids, so I knew he was going to be a pretty stand-up guy, and he portrays how he interacts with
Yeah.
his family really well. And
Mhm.
he just, the way in which he conducted himself around the kids was awesome. Like, you can tell someone is really genuine when you watch them interact with kids. And
Mhm.
he sort of like tried to bring himself down a little bit, like to their level, which as a
Yeah.
mom is really comforting, because I have, and Azariah was 3 at that point, and she's very nervous, and she's still like a very shy little girl. And so to see him kind of like not push her and just sort of approach her, and like, he's not a small guy, but he tried to make himself like a little more on her level. That was really cool. And I was really, really impressed by that. So
Yeah.
overall, like, he is a great guy.
That's awesome.
And granted, like, I can't judge his character off of my
Of course.
interactions, but he, how you can tell someone's putting on a front.
Of
I didn't
course.
feel that with him at all. I didn't feel that. I felt
That's
like
so
he was
cool.
genuine. I felt like he took the time to say hello and to, like, try to connect too, which was really cool.
Mhm.
After every event, you got to like talk to him or see him, and he didn't have to encourage us, but he did. And he affirmed us, and yeah, it was awesome. And after I lost the second event, he came up and he was like, you are a great mom, and like, this does not define you. And I was like, you didn't have to say that. Like,
Oh,
you
that's
didn't
so
have
awesome.
to affirm me as I left. So I was overall super impressed. I will say that this is definitely a show that I feel really confident representing. And
Oh,
you're always skeptical, like, especially as a Christian and as someone who is, tries to be very I care a lot about my character and what I do put
right.
my name on, and all that stuff. And the Titan Games is like, I love it. I love that my daughter got to watch me on that show. I love that my sister got to be on that show. And I was grateful for how they carried things and ran things. And yeah.
That
So
is so great
he's
to hear.
awesome.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Well, I
he's
mean,
an awesome guy.
that's a relief because I did not want to have to take my rock poster off the wall after
I
the fight.
know.
But no, it's actually really cool to hear about, someone being the same in all phases of their life, right? Because it's easy
Totally.
to have a public persona and to be
Mm,
somebody that they're not, especially when it comes to movie stars. And the
totally.
fact that I know that he had his dad, I think it was his dad, passed
Mm,
away somewhere near the
totally.
show, but he
Yeah.
was also filming thousands, hundreds of movies and all this different stuff at
Yeah.
once. So really cool. Well, hey,
Yeah.
just let's transition into another area. It's
Mm,
not closely related, but areas that you're passionate about. And that's just like diet, exercise, health, wellness. Kind of the channel
totally.
and, kind of the website that I've built together is about kind of combining the two worlds of, physical health and wellness with Christianity, with the faith. And I don't think
Mm,
either of those things are like mutually exclusive. But if you
right.
kind of like look out at the world, or at least look out at within, within Christian circles, you don't see a ton of
Mm,
crossover. So I'm curious to think, like, maybe I'll just ask you a question. Do you
mm.
think that there's a relationship between, physical health, diet, and wellness and exercise and Christianity? Is there an overt connection or not?
Yeah. Um, this is obviously something that I feel like I can speak to, not because I'm an expert, just because I've lived it. Um,
Mhm.
I played water polo competitively for a very long time. My goal when I was younger was to go to the Olympics to play water polo. Like, I've always been into one thing and then thought, like, okay, what's the end goal? Like, that's always been
Mhm.
my sort of personality, and it's always like, I want to get the furthest in the things that I'm doing. Um, and I went through a period of time where, I grew up in a Christian home, and I always had that exposure to Christianity, but
Mhm.
it really has been my experiences through sport that have pushed me further in my faith.
Mhm.
I did try to do it by myself. Like, there was a period of time when I was younger and hadn't quite taken hold of my faith, that I was just living for Natalie, and I was living to be good at sports because that's how I felt like I had
Wow.
created my value. Was like, oh, if
Yeah.
you're good at sports, like, if you're good at this, if you're good at everything you do, people are, you'll be fine. Like, people will be into you, and people will love you if you're good at this stuff. And so I think I channeled a lot of that into that.
Mm.
And it wasn't until college and FCA, which I think you're involved with FCA as well. But it wasn't until FCA really that I was like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And if I want to be good at sports, like, I am going to have to figure things out. I'm going to have to figure them out spiritually, especially because I'm not going to get any further in sports, in life, if I don't have this dialed in. And so it took a lot of trial and error, honestly. And it took a lot of like, injury, quite frankly, to
Mhm.
get there. It was kind of like the Lord, like, okay, so if you want to continue to do this on your own, like, let's see what that looks like. And it wasn't until I really relinquished control that I felt on top of my game, or I felt the best, or a lot of stress was alleviated in my life. So that sort of began the journey of finding the relationship between the two, because there is one. Like, there is one, and I often want to scream it from the rooftops, because I don't think I would be half the athlete that I am, half the mom that I am, if I didn't have sport and faith. And I know that's just how I was born. I was born competitive. I have a competitive nature. But I feel called to give my all to the things that I feel called to, if that makes sense. So finding the relationship between faith and fitness, or faith and sport, has been a joy for me. So to answer your question, there is a very clear crossover. And I don't know if we align on this, but I feel like overarching, the church misses it often. And you know, like I have a lot of I feel a lot of, I don't know the right word, but I get frustrated sometimes at churches when they put out donuts and pizza and all of these things at events, because I'm like, we want these people to function. We want them to function well, and we're not even giving them the tools to do that. And so, and I'm not necessarily saying, obviously churches have people's best interest in mind, you know, like I'm not saying they're purposely trying to give everybody diabetes, because that's not the case. But I think that there is
giving them diabetes.
Right. And there is this level of education that people don't have in regards to this stuff. And my goal is to be the best wife, the best mother, the best athlete, and the best Christ follower that I can be. And if I'm not investing in my faith and my fitness and my health through that process, I'm not going to be my best to do that stuff. And it wasn't until I really started taking control of those areas of my life that I was experiencing freedom spiritually and physically, right? I always felt so bogged down by injury and health problems. And then it was like, once I started training in godliness, and once I started, you know, committing to reading my Bible and investing in my faith, I wasn't bogged down by injury. You know, I wasn't held back by health problems. I was actually thriving, and I actually felt energized and felt like I was doing the things that the Lord had called me to do. So I don't know if that answers your question. But I see a clear connection between the two.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, I think you're spot on about the church. I think, you know, I've said this a few other times pretty recently, but it feels like, you know, the church, especially people in leadership, care so much about everything, as they should, and how everything relates to faith. And so, you know, whether it's what you're buying, or, you know, the relationships in your life, or who you vote for politically, and all these different things like capitalism and social. So every issue we care a lot about as it relates to our faith. But when it comes to this one area, this sliver of like health, it's kind of like we are allowing, you know, maybe everybody else to take the lead on that. And so we're like, well, things in moderation, and who knows? And so it's like this there's this acceptable nature in church about like how eating and what you eat and how you move, as if it doesn't matter. And so that kind of that does bug me, because I do think we need to begin to look through the lens of the Bible and through the lens of our faith as to what we should be eating, how we should be eating, and whom we should be eating with, and what the actual physical effects are on our bodies. But there are some people in the world that are doing great things with their podcasts and their websites, and doctors, things like that are totally owning this area, and the church feels like it's just behind again.
Yeah, totally. And I can agree with that. I think the first time John, my father-in-law, had told me, or had introduced me to who you were, was because he had listened to something that you put out, and he was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like you. Like, this sounds like how you talk. And I do feel very convicted about it. I felt very convicted about it for a while. And I am obviously very convicted about my faith as well. And so there's this like constant struggle with me where I'm like, I know pastors their hearts are in the right place. I know that they're trying to do the right thing. But with that being said, if you're not investing in your health and your fitness, you are not going to be everything you could be for the people of your church. And so a lot of that, I know, is just not knowing how, or maybe feeling this biblical tug that I think a lot of people feel often, is like, you know, it does say in the Bible, that we are to train physically, but it also says that training in godliness comes first. And I think oftentimes when people are like, well, obviously I should commit to my spiritual training, not my physical training. They take those verses and they sort of misconstrue them, because it is said in the Bible that we do need to take care of our bodies and we do need to do that. It's just not first. And so the way that I live my life with my fitness and my health is I'm trying to find the connection between the two. Is I want to train physically and I want to train spiritually. And if I can train spiritually while I'm training physically, wouldn't that be the best way to yield results, both
Totally.
physically and spiritually? So, I think it's all a heart posture when you're working out, like, what gives you motivation? Why are you doing the things you do? Are you doing them so you look good in the summertime? Or are you doing them because it's the right thing for your body? Are you living the closest to the way that God has created you? And so I spend a lot of time thinking about those things.
You're spot on, and you're right. I mean, I think we definitely share this thought process, because as it relates to a lot of people, when they think about health and eating, they have this like fear of like vanity, as if like they're going to become an Instagram model or a bodybuilder in 2 weeks, and then they'll be vain and then forsaken Christ if they start working out. And that's a reality. It is a reality for a lot of people. But the other side of the ship is poor bodily stewardship or self-neglect, and God does say body is a temple, and the purpose of the temple in the Old Testament was it was the dwelling place of God, and as that temple falls, the Spirit now is in the believer, and we have a responsibility to steward our bodies well, and stewarding your body is a literal act of worship to God in one respect. And so I think we're missing a whole other part of our faith. But I do want to get your opinion on this next. There are so many other benefits to taking care of your body that I think if, like, let's say a Christian heard and understood, they would really go, you know what, maybe that does align with my faith more. So I'm curious to know what you think those might be, but I'll just give you a couple off the top and let you riff off of them. Like longevity. So people might say, I want to be being alive for your kids and your grandkids, and then also to keep doing God's mission.
Right.
That could be a spiritual, idea. So I don't know what your thoughts are on maybe that aspect of eating well, longevity.
Totally. And I think that's like one of the biggest things. Like, that's one of the biggest things I try to instill in my clients. I work with a lot of moms. I work with dads. I work with people who are investing so much in their families, and oftentimes they've fallen back, like they've forgotten to take care of themselves, and which is fine. Like, I see your heart in that. Like, I see that you are giving and you're sacrificing for your family, but it's my job. I feel like it's my job to instill value in that person as well. Like, you aren't going to be everything for your family if you're not here, or if you're not, or if you're half here, right? Like, eating processed foods heavily laden down with synthetic things that have been created in a laboratory to taste better. Like, your body's not functioning well when you're eating those things. And so how can you expect to be your best if you're doing those kinds of things? So I definitely think, investing in yourself so you can invest in the kingdom, like, that's a lot of the reason I do what I do and eat the way that I eat. And people always ask me about my diet and what I do and how I do that. And I honestly have just been heavily convicted. Like, it has been very clear to me that I'm not going to be a great Natalie if I am not making sure that I'm eating the right things and I'm not moving my body or building strength. Like, I know I'm not going to be a good mom. I know I'm not going to be a good wife. And I know I'm not going to be able to advance the kingdom at the rate that I feel like I should be, because what the Lord has called me to. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but
no,
longevity
totally
is
does.
huge.
Well, and you brought up a great point about performing now. I mean, so for instance, I'm a pastor, so I preach,
Mm.
In normal circumstances, I preach
Right.
live on a stage, and
Yeah.
I've been doing that for 10 years after my football
Mhm.
career. So I've been doing that a long time, and you could get up there after you eat like pancakes and syrup and coffee with cream and sugar. You could, and but you'll be
Totally.
yawning and you'll have brain fog, and so it's like, well, why don't
Mm.
I eat something that I know will help me think as clear as possible, so that way I'm able to relay what God is
Totally.
saying to the people as
Hmm.
effectively as possible. And that can translate to
Hmm.
playing with your children, being in a relationship with your parents, at work, and being a good employee, whatever it may be. So the
Totally.
performing aspect today matters a lot.
Mm. Mhm.
And not
Well,
only
and it's true. It's
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
keep going. It's so true,
No,
and I think that I think I've said it, but I think a lot of people just don't know. Like, they just don't know the difference, and that's why I feel
mhm,
so invested in working with people on fitness and nutrition,
yeah,
because it's like, if you knew that there was another way to feel, maybe you wouldn't wanna feel this way, you know? Like, maybe if you
yeah,
knew that eating breakfast with a lot of protein and a lot of fat in the morning and less carbohydrates or less sugar
mhm,
is going to help you last throughout the day. Like, if you just knew that, maybe you would be able to do that.
yes,
And I think that that's why I've invested myself in it and helping people understand that, because I
mhm,
think they could be better. And I obviously have a heart for people in ministry. I've been in ministry for
mhm,
years. I consider what I do ministry. And I've watched it all over. I lived in Kenya for a year after college, and I lived with a
mhm,
bunch of other missionaries, and, um, you learn a lot by what people eat and how long they're gonna make it, like, you know, what kinds of things they're able to invest themselves into because of
yeah,
the way that they invest in their bodies, and so, especially in somewhere like Kenya, you have the opportunity to eat totally of the earth and without
mhm,
any, like, nothing's it's all it's way more, fresh, and you know where it's coming from and all of
no
that stuff,
processed
so
Pop-Tarts or granola
yeah,
bars. Yeah,
no, not at all. So you're just, like, automatically eating healthier when you're there, which is great. But yeah, I think that a
that's
lot of
good.
it has to do with education and not knowing
Mhm,
or not you've got so much to do, like, and you've got so many souls that you feel responsible for, and so I think that
right,
that's what I want people to understand often is, like, ask for help. Ask somebody for help,
good.
because if you feel lethargic or you feel like you can't get through a day without 7 cups of coffee, like, there's an issue. You shouldn't feel like that. Whether it be what you're eating, that you're not moving your body, maybe it's stress, it could
Right.
be a myriad of different things, but ask somebody for help, because I guarantee if you're a pastor in your congregation, there is someone like Natalie who is passionate about health and fitness who can get you in the right direction. And it's
Of
just a matter
course.
of finding those people, trusting them, and then asking them for help to get there.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
good wisdom. And I think people don't, maybe people don't want to rely on other people for it, but I think this is an area where,
Mm,
and the truth is, I mean, if you look at kind of some of the government guidelines, what the FDA says, a lot of people, maybe
mm.
it's not even that they just don't know, it's that they've been misinformed. And there's so much misinformation.
Totally,
And then
totally.
you've got like big pharma and big agriculture involved. And then there's policy and lobbyist groups that are kind of getting like certain like things like Splenda kind of passed into
Totally.
making it a food that we can eat. So people are saying, I just trust in the government. The food
I don't know
pyramid
what to
says
do.
12 servings of grain a
Yeah,
day. Yeah. So
totally.
that's really good wisdom, just to say, hey, find resources that'll help you and get you involved. So speaking of resources, you're one, kind of just to end our time. You've got somebody that's watching this or listening to this,
Mm.
and they want to go, okay, I'm sold, Natalie. What are 2 or 3 things I can do like this week that can begin my journey to like a good God honoring health? What can I do?
Mhm. Totally. Well, I think there's obviously so much. And I think oftentimes when people come to me and ask for nutrition guidance, they're like, they have this expectation that they're going to change all of these things about their diet in their first week. And I'm like, here's the deal. No, because not all, some of us are capable of that, but not all of us are capable of that. And so it's finding the small things and creating habits to get there. So, you know, if you're drinking soda and eating fast food every day, I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking soda and eating fast food every day. I'm going to have you take fast food out once a week and then twice a week. And then we're going to get to the point where you're not eating it at all. But so often I see people who are like, all right, I'm all in. I'm going to throw everything in my pantry outside. And then a week later, they're like, whoa, like that was way too much. And they don't quite know. They're not sure how to maintain that. So I think the first part would be to make attainable and actionable goals. So you're not going to fix everything all at once, but how can you start to make the small changes that can get you there? So whether that be maybe cutting out something you know doesn't sit well in your stomach, or you know, cutting sugar out of your diet, things like that could be a good direction to go. So finding small things, not jumping in head first, is always something that I try to help people understand. The other thing would be education. Like the more you know, the easier it is to make these decisions. At least that's how I feel. Like I feel so convicted about these things because I know what they do to my body. And so I always tell people, learn what these things are doing through your digestive tract. And if you then choose to make the decision to eat them, at least you have the knowledge and at least you're not doing it blindly. So I tell people to learn what fat is, learn what protein is, learn what carbohydrates are. And once you know what they are, you might have an idea of how they sustain you and how they can better sustain you by the different kinds that you're eating. So that's a lot of what I do, is education around what are those things? Like, what are these things everybody's talking about and why should I care about them? So those are just a couple of things. Learn and then change small things. Habits are what are going to make the most change in your life.
Good work. Well, this has been super informative, even for me. I mean, first of all, your story on and the Titan Games and all that stuff, and understanding CrossFit has been super helpful. So I appreciate you for coming on. And if there are anybody, if there's anyone watching that wants to know more about you, what can they do? How can they learn more about you? You have Instagram or social media or anything like that?
Yeah, totally. I am super available via Instagram. My handle is natlovesyou22. If you have questions or need direction or guidance, if I don't have the answer or I don't have what you need right away, I can definitely turn you in that direction. So please reach out. I tell people advice is free. Like, I nutrition coach and I work with people, I work with paying clients, but for you to reach out and have a conversation with me, I don't want your money. So I always want people to feel the freedom to come to me and ask. Again, if I don't have the answer, I will make sure you get pushed in the right direction.
And I'll include your social media links into the show notes as well. So if people listen to this in the future,
Awesome.
well, they're present while they're listening, but our future, they'll be able to find you. So
Yeah.
Natalie, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate